Congratulations, you're out of that bubble. You're open to hearing other points of view. So now, how do you figure out what information and facts are true? Not an easy task, but not that hard either. With the internet at our disposal, it's a lot easier than ever before. As you're on your journey to becoming more informed and open to hearing various points of view, you need to keep a few things in mind. First, you want to use a variety of sources to confirm facts that you've been presented or things you previously believed to be true. This is best because I don't believe there are any sources that are 100% unbiased. After all, they're built by humans that are biased. First, I want to share some fairly reliable sources I use. There are a number of websites you can use to determine if your source is actually reliable or shown to have a bias in the reporting. Some I like to use are MediaBiasFactCheck.com, AllSides.com, PolitiFact.com, Snoops.com, FactCheck.org, FlackCheck.org, TruthOrFiction.com, HoaxSlayer.com. Now I know that seems like a lot, but the more the merrier when you're trying to determine the truth. But keep in mind, just because someone is biased doesn't necessarily mean they won't provide legitimate facts. It will, however, give you an idea what perspective they'll use in presenting the facts. To show you how this works and how to go about collecting information on topics that interest you, I'll share some examples based on how I researched a previous presentation I did on gun control. I wanted to find out what facts there were for and against specific gun control claims. So one of the questions I had was, how many Americans are gun owners? I came across a site called pewresearch.org that had a lot of data on various topics, not just this one. Trying to determine if it was a reliable source, I looked them up on MediaBiasFactCheck.com and AllSides.com and determined it was a safe resource to use in my research. Let me just take a quick moment to show you how I use these resources. Going to Media Bias Fact Check, on the top right-hand side, you just put in the name of the organization that you're looking up. Then if they have any information, they'll present it and they'll score it based on a sliding scale as to whether it's extremely biased in one direction or another. It'll also give you a factual reporting level as well. Another site I wanted to show you was All Sides, and in there you could enter in a search for a source that you wanted to look at. And same with the other website, this gives you a rating based on whether it's extreme left or extreme right or in the center as far as how it presents the facts. Some resources are harder to confirm biases. In those cases, I just try to find who's used their information before and whether or not those were biased in certain ways. But again, something to keep in mind is just because a source has a bias doesn't mean that they're untrustworthy. So as you become familiar with various sites, you'll begin to realize which are presenting legitimate facts and which ones are not. This leads me to my next point. Just because we're willing to hear various sides doesn't mean we have to listen to any site or person who wants to share facts with us. Some sources are just not worth listening to. People or sources that I avoid listening to are ones that use authority over you. They claim this higher power of knowing more than you do, and that's why you should listen to them. Other ones are ones that make blanket statements, basically try to throw a group of people that they dislike into a box and saying that they're all the same. People who try shaming you into accepting their views, making you feel like an awful person if you don't agree with them. People who state that the majority of people agree with them and make you feel kind of like a minority as far as your viewpoints. Somebody who rephrase or just make assumptions about what people say, basically twisting people's words around to make it sound like they said something that they actually didn't. People who make you feel out of touch because you question them, maybe saying something like, "Do you really believe that?" Another thing is people who make you feel foolish for believing what you believe, similar to my other one, but maybe even kind of scoffing or laughing at you because of your belief. People who simplify the issue in order to force a dominant answer. An example of this would be if you're for gun rights, then you're against protecting people from gun violence. The last one is forcing a lesser part of the discussion that isn't even being argued. An example of this may be if you're pro-choice, saying that, well, you don't care about the poverty that my child would have to grow into and endure if I did choose to not have an abortion. If you encounter sites or people who use these tactics, it's probably best not to take them seriously since they don't take opposing sides seriously. Sure, we can all be a little cynical and fall into biased ways of thinking, but we need to acknowledge that it's wrong and stop. Lastly, get familiar with the terms being used. Not understanding what is really being said or not putting things into the proper perspective can lead to believing something that isn't necessarily true. An example of this would be what I came across when looking into data regarding gun control. Someone may cite a fact like this. When looking for data regarding how many people are murdered from the use of a gun, I found this graph that seems to state that gun deaths are growing. However, there's some things this statistic doesn't take into account. One, it doesn't take into account the increase in population every year, nor the fact that over 60% of all gun deaths is from suicide. Since I'm really more interested in people unwillingly being murdered by guns, or what's known as a homicide rate, this graph doesn't really give me the information I need. Not only that, but as I stated, it doesn't take into account the overall growth in population every year. So a graph like this would be more along the lines of what I'm looking for. Not only does it show the firearm homicide deaths, but it also breaks it down per 100,000 people. So it puts it in a better perspective as to whether or not it's climbing or not. So now you're ready and you have some tools to use when receiving new information and facts. I encourage you to listen to all sides. Go with the better argument, and then if that argument is debunked, it's okay to change your mind. There should never be shame in changing your mind when new facts are presented. Shame should only be felt by those who refuse to be moved because they fear feeling shame. If you felt this presentation was helpful, please share it with others, like it, or leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.